Morning office. Without data, you're just another person with an opinion, as quoted by Mr. Edward Still. With that powerful reminder of the world we operate in today, a very warm good morning to all our esteemed panelists, respected faculty members, industry leaders, alumni, and our dear students. I, Asta Singh, along with my co-host Ahana, on behalf of the Industry Interaction Committee, welcome you all to the fifth edition of Vishleshan, the Annual Analytics Conclave of IIM Kashipur. Vishleshan stands for analysis, for structured thinking, for informed judgment, and for transforming insights into impact. In today's world, enterprises are no longer just data rich, they are intelligence driven. Algorithms recommend, dashboards predict, AI generates. But the real question is, how do organizations convert insights into enterprise-wide insight? And that brings us to today's theme, decision making in the era of intelligent enterprise. Today, we explore how data, technology, finance, and leadership converge to create organizations that are not just digital, but decisively intelligent. Before we move ahead, we would like to showcase a short introductory video about IIM Kashipur.
The Indian Institute of Management Kashipur is a second-generation IIM set by the Government of India in 2011. In all these years, the institute stands true to its vision and mission. Our vision is to be an institute of eminence that fosters management research and education and develops leaders for creating positive societal impact in a changing world. And the mission of IIM Kashipur is to create and disseminate knowledge through applied and interdisciplinary research and practices in emerging areas of management. IIM Kashipur, a completely student-driven campus, from placements to functional work, from academic to non-academic activities, there is a student body for each discipline. Being a part of such student bodies and event-specific teams, students get first-hand experience of time management, working in a team, situation handling, and managing positive relationships with the administration. We aim to achieve new heights with every new batch of students. We celebrate the ups and downs of the journey of our beloved students and would like to wish them luck for upcoming years.
Our first panel titled From Insight to Impact, Building Enterprise-Wide Decision Intelligence. Decision intelligence is not just about better dashboards. It's about embedding analytics into culture, operations, finance, and strategy. It is about moving from insight to foresight, and from foresight to the competitive advantage. It is to help us decode this transformation. We are honored to host a distinguished panel of industry leaders who are shaping intelligent enterprise at scale. I now invite Ahana to join me in introducing our esteemed panel. We are pleased to welcome Mr. Abhinav Vijayvargiya, Chief Financial Officer at Scaling. He is a chartered accountant with over 15 years of experience across FMCG and high-growth consumer internet business. He has previously contributed to organizations such as ITC, Swiggy, and Hagago. Mr. Vijayvargiya specializes in building analytics-led finance frameworks that drive monetization strategy and enable capital-efficient growth. This work exemplifies how financial intelligence and data-driven experimentation can bridge strategy and execution. Sir, it is a privilege to have you with us today. May I now request Professor Anand Aggarwal, Dean Development of IIM Kashipur, to felicitate Mr. Abhinav Vijayvargiya.
Thanks,
We are truly honored to welcome Mr. Anand Aggarwal, Chief Technology Officer at Bennett Coleman, widely known as the Times Group. With over 25 years of experience across BFSI, telecom, and media, Mr. Aggarwal is recognized as a pioneer in building intelligent enterprise at scale. He has led enterprise infrastructure modernization, AI strategy implementation, and large-scale cloud migration, driving measurable impact including significant cost optimization and advanced AI-powered content and risk analytics systems. A recipient of prestigious honors including the Visionary CIO recognition and the NASSCOM Innovative CIO Award, he is also known for translating complex technology to tangible business value. So we are deeply privileged to have you with us today. May I request Professor Kunal Ganguly, Dean Development at Kashipur to kindly facilitate Mr. Anand. We are privileged to welcome Mr. Chandan Vijay, Global Chief Data Officer for Energy Industries at ABB. With over 2 decades of global experience, Mr. Vijay leads enterprise-wide data strategies that transforms data into a trusted and scalable asset for fact-based decision making. An expert in master data management, data governance, and enterprise BI modernization, he has successfully driven large-scale digital transformations initiatives across industries. A strong advocate of data-centric innovation, he is deeply committed to building future-ready AI-assisted digital capabilities that fuel sustained business growth. Sir, it is an honor to have you with us today. May I now request Professor Utkarsh, Chairperson, Placement and Corporate Relations, to felicitate Mr. Chandan Vijay. We are honored to welcome Mr. Devra Bhattacharya, Director at the Data and Analytics Practice at PwC India. With over 18 years of experience in business intelligence, data warehousing, analytics, and large-scale transformation initiatives, he has led high-impact teams across more than 10 countries. His work centers around enabling global enterprise to leverage data lakes, analytics platform, and transformation of strategies to drive measurable business value. So we are grateful to have your expertise guiding today in the discussion. May I request Professor Utkarsh Chairperson, Placement and Corporate Relations and Kashipur to kindly felicitate Mr. Devra Bhattacharya. We are delighted to welcome Mr. Gaurav Sharma, Head of Technology for Fresh Foods Business at IPC Limited. An alumnus of IIT Kanpur, Mr. Sharma has led leadership roles across organizations such as Delivery, Licious, Inframarket, and Lowe's. With deep expertise in product strategy, engineering, and operations across B2B and B2C ecosystems, he has led multiple 1 to 0 to 1 product innovations and architected scalable technology platforms. Known for aligning technology with business outcomes, he represents the powerful intersection of product thinking and enterprise intelligence. Sir, we are truly honored to have you. May I request Professor Deepak Verma, Chair Placement and Corporate Relations, IIM Kashipur, to felicitate Mr. Gaurav Sharma. To moderate this session, we are pleased to welcome Mr. Rahul Dirari, Product Manager at Orient Electrics Limited. He leads category strategy and new product initiative, working extensively across data-driven portfolio planning, market analytics, and go-to-market execution. With hands-on experience in translating insights into scalable business outcomes, Rahul brings a strong practitioner's perspective to decision-making in today's intelligent enterprise landscape. We are delighted to have you with us. May I request Professor Deepak Verma, Chairperson, Chair Placements and Corporate Relations at Kashipur to kindly felicitate Mr. Rahul Vijayvargiya. With that, I now invite our respected moderator to initiate the session and guide us through the insightful conversation on building enterprise-wide decision intelligence. Thank you.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Rahul Vijayvargiya. I'm an alumni of 24 batch IIM Kashipur. It feels as if the circle has completed. I visited this campus after 2 years. I hope everyone is excited to listen to what we have. We have exciting topic. We have people who have a lot to put on the table. And I request everyone to just watch and listen to what these stalwarts have to provide. Data, insights, pattern, algorithm, all these things are surrounding us. But there is still a gap between insight and impact. Today's question is why and how to build that gap. Where algorithms are and patterns are being ignored, and that feeling is something that comes into picture. The question is why enterprises aren't intelligent enough or identifying the data, the insights that are coming from the pool. So today, I welcome all of you, and we want your help to understand that how these insights and impacts, patterns, algorithms can be utilized to make an enterprise intelligent. So let's start with the first question that I want to ask. Sure. Sorry. Yeah. Yeah. Got it. So let's start with the first question. Data driven is something that surrounds us everywhere. Everyone talks about being data driven. Everyone talks about identifying the insights, the patterns, and then directing your question, directing your problem statement towards something that will make an impact. But my question to all of you is, besides this terminology, what is the actual execution plan? How should we actually make an enterprise intelligent? It's open to everyone. Hi. Very interesting question. See, when we talk about data driven, so we typically talk about data is everywhere, right? So we talk about dashboards, we talk about reports. That is what is called data driven. I give an example. So you have a world is talking about the self-driving cars. What is the ingredient to that? Ingredient to that is the data, which is the GPS. So GPS is the data driven and self-driving is the decision which is coming out of that data. So that is one example I would say. Now again, I will give an example from the Kashipur perspective. I mean, so the main railway station side, there is a huge traffic jam in the main Kashipur. So the Google Map shows you that there is a traffic jam around that area.
But to reach to that point, there are two options. One, you go to right side of the IIM, or one you can take the left side road. That is the decision intelligence. So I think that is what it is. I would look it from the data versus. So data in itself has no meaning unless it is integrated into the system, which helps you to take decisions intelligently. That's my take on it. Got it.
Add on top of what Anand just mentioned, that in nowadays what term people usually coin, that's a decision intelligence tool. And very high level, it means that it's about sensing from there to learning to deciding, then execution and refining. That's the entire cycle. Now, it also means that we talk so much on data-driven organization. But really, we say that this is an intelligence. That intelligence should not happen, it should not be there in the dashboard. It's a postmortem, right? Something has happened now, I'm saying. But the current trend that world is moving towards, it's more like a decision-driven organization, where the AI should be embedded, just what I mentioned, in the workflows. Whoever is taking the decision, it should not be an in-silo decision taken by one individual. It should be part of the integrated decision landscape or ecosystem. And where you are there as a decision taker, where your upstream, that's the suppliers are there, your downstream customers are there, and your co-workers are there. So it's a collective decision that organization is taking. And that way, we are taking the decision as and when the data gets originated, not at a very downstream point of view. That's what I guess is probably something that the organization is also changing to adopt this thing so that they are able to create more impact and leverage the AI or the intelligence more, I would say, in a more embedded manner with whatever that organization is.
Good morning, all of you. Thanks to the IIM team for inviting me here. Firstly, that's a great question. And when I thought about decision intelligence and data, I thought about what I read in the past about it: data, information, then finally dashboards and reporting tools. But now decision intelligence is more about building systems so that decisions can be automated, they can be embedded in the routine work tasks. An idea is to minimize lots of decisions which needs to be taken on a real-time basis using multiple tools, technology. So it's about evolution of systems to create that decision framework, which is just not restricted to leadership teams and management teams, but to the entire workforce across the org. And of course, data is still relevant, but there should be a process to derive information out of it using dashboards, analytics, tools, and then trying to put this framework to all the hierarchies of the organization. So that's what I think about decision intelligence these days. So I've been in data for last 15 years. We used to do machine learning earlier when I was in delivery. So one thing which I have learned in these 15 years is on data alone you cannot trust. The problem is data is as good as the way it has been collected. You can collect bad data, you can collect good data, and if your system is learning on that data, then it can learn right or wrong. So the first step is to identify where and how that data need to be collected.
And once you are perfectly sure in an experiment or POC or whatever you are doing, that this data that has been collected is right, then the next step is who is the right person to take action on that data? Okay, if I give a machine gun to a kid, he certainly will kill people which are not intelligent with it. Okay, so second step, we identified the people who need to be empowered with that data. Once those people are empowered, then can we automate that empowerment so that that decision making can be automated by a system or let's say by a process. For example, recently we have seen that Zomato and Swiggy has moved their all customer complaints to an automated system, which is learning and sometimes learning wrong also. Because people are getting images from AI and uploading that food is not up. Then they have learned that this is not going to work. We need to provide a real-time video feed architecture. So step one, how to collect data, what to collect. Step two, who need to be empowered. Step three, the system can do the empowered job. And step four, everything can be automated in a single code. If you see how a large enterprise, for example, let us in our system we do let's say thousands of decisions every day. System takes thousands of decisions every day, and we have automated most of these decisions because we are collecting a huge amount of data. Uh, I will not be able to tell you how much amount of data they are collecting, but we have systems in place, IoT in place in each and every step, and we collect a large amount of data just to make sure that the food that's coming to your plate is the right one that we want to eat. So decision making is not a one step solution. The solution starts from how we are collecting it and how we are empowering the last person to take that decision.
Just wanted to add one point to this thing. I think since the audience is the MBA students here, we are not the coders actually, right? So data, as you write, is the data is there, it was always available. But and decision were also always taken. But probably it used to take a couple of days, hours, weeks to take a right decision. The situation has turned with the AI advancement of AI. People preference have changed completely. I think as an MBA, what you need, you will be leading your organization, helping in terms of strategy, execution, of more from that perspective. Now, the decision intelligence is that using that dashboard, using the data, you are given a decision, and using that is as you rightly said, you can create strategy, which is in the today's environment for a changing behavior of the customer is extremely important. See, I give a very classic example, just to 2 minutes on this topic, is a consumer behavior. See, it does not change abruptly. So if you are using a credit card, or if you give an example from an OTT industry, media industry, you don't stop buying a channel, stop using card on the immediately very next day. There is a pattern. You will start reducing your usage, you will start reducing your viewing, and then at point in time. So that data is there. Now, if I bring that data, so that as a MBS, as a strategy person, using that data, you can say, oh, I need to offer some intelligence to it, I need some offer. That is what it is becoming the data and the intelligence.
Let's start this point. I think just to give you one more example, like just what he quoted today, what we are watching is what Netflix is recommending to us. Its recommendations are directly on our, on our list to watch. So this kind of personalization where the behavior is shaped by insights and systems. I think this is real decision intelligence at play at mass. Yes.
This is a very interesting question. We can keep talking for hours and hours on this question.
So basically, what I want to shed light on is the students who are sitting in this room have a mixed background. Some of them come from engineering, some of them have a management background. So blend is sitting and they want to understand that when we have catered to the question of making an enterprise intelligent, the other question is what are the key obstacles? Because we have observed the inertia that we already have whenever something new is happening, right? What we learn in IIM Kashipur is shooting right. So we want to understand what are the main obstacles, how is the ecosystem having inertia, and how to cater to that obstacles.
to take this question. Thank you very much for inviting us, Sanjay. I think what I understand your question is all about what's the obstacle in the decision intelligence or taking decisions, right? From that perspective, I think one of the biggest things that is traditionally across a lot of industrial manufacturing organizations is first of all the data collection and the data quality. And I think I'll go back to the first question that was out there. It is about the speed of decision making. Traditionally, we've been working on collecting data, building dashboards, making it available to leadership. But what that is as rightly said, it's post-product. It's a descriptor of what has already happened. And in today's world, where the lead is moving on is, how do you get the information in the hand of decision making or the decision maker at the right time, or even before that, before time? So where the world is moving is prescriptive and predictive forecasting, analytical capabilities which are telling people in advance what is the likelihood of an event. And therefore, you need to adjust your business strategy or decision making. Because if something has already happened, you can only dissect it. So we always talk about feedback, right? In decision making, feedback is about what's happened. What can I do about it? If you look at feed forward, which is how do I give insight to you well in advance so that you can make a decision now about how things are going to change, that is where the event you need to move to. And I think the biggest obstacle is first is getting the data and or the information in the hand of person who is supposed to make the decision at the right time, before time. And then the second is how do you collect that information, decipher it, process it, infer it, and make it available at the speed at which the decisions can be made. So I think those are two big elements that I would look at.
Points here on this. First, but Chandan Vijay already covered that making the data available. This part is very important, and especially at the age of AI. Why? Because if I see there's a large data sets, and in today's organization, data doesn't reside in your company or in the RDBMS of traditional world. It resides even in the contract, which is unstructured data. It resides in making Excel file or text file, which is semi-structured. And obviously in the databases, it sometimes resides in the knowledge of the people, in their mind. They understand, okay, it goes that way. Sometimes this data is a macroeconomic data available in public domain. So the first challenge is this, that how can I gather all this data? Second challenge is this, how can I infer something which is meaningful to me or for my business? And when I say inferring something, it also means how can I get rid of the prejudice, social prejudice, biasness, whatever is there. It's very nice to hear that yes, there's AI. AI is now more like that buzzword HD. Up to color bhi HD hota hai. Sab kuch HD hai. Now AI is also like that. But and the major challenge, if somebody wants to take any decision on the basis of a AI, whatever AI is saying, then it also means it's a black box, right? If I ask this AI that can you explain me this, there may be hallucination, right? We all are aware of it. There can be amplification of the prejudice, biasness in the data sets, right? So who is accountable for that? I'm taking some financial decision and my company is making a loss for that. Can I trust that data? Can my board stakeholders will trust that data? Or they will say, ये तो AI का भरोसा नहीं लिया है, इसको छोड़ दो, तो छोड़ेगा नहीं भाई, right? So the point here is this: how can I make it explain? How can I at least generate or have some kind of traceability lineage, so that that data, that decision makes sense at the board level? I can explain Why it is so? So it also means there should be some kind of guardrails to ensure that this data set, what I'm on the basis of which the decision has been taken, the data can be trusted. Second, the AI, which has taken the decision or which actually helped me to generating the insights from the data sets, but drawing the insights from the data set, I can trust that. So guardrails, there can be n number of different options. And you all know people, we are using ChatGPTs, Geminis, perplexities, and all such models. AI, we know right how it happens. So those are important. And unless we able to do that, there is always a challenge, always a fear factor that happens, that always in the mind of the individual who is a decision taker. But should I trust it? Should I take something on the basis of this? Or rather, I will go with my experience and platform. That's very natural tendency. And nobody at that particular position wants to spend their 8 hours, 10 hours a day by seeing the drop downs and all those things in a dash. So it makes absolutely important for an organization that you have those guardrails available so that people can trust the data, people can trust the insight generated out of it, and those data points are rightly available to the right person at right point of time. So that you don't need to move between 10 systems to get it. It should be automatically made available to him, integrated with the flow, so that decision can be taken right there. And obviously keeping all those contextual, ethical point of view, responsibility point of view in mind. Because if that can be done, then we can see the rise of the next level of organization where things are driven by decisions and data.
Just, I think very valid point. Just to add to this point, one of the biggest obstacle in my way is the people. We talk about culture. What is culture of an organization? It is nothing. Culture is made by the people who are in the organization. So it's the people. So best of the ideas die down because the person is not willing to change. I mean, you have an example to explain this thing. I mean, let's say a bank has got a very good credit risk system. But as a branch manager, I want to help him, so I want to bypass that. So that is the obstacle. Now, he gave an example of Netflix. Now, that is the intelligence which is coming out from the data. But to present that intelligence to me or not to me is again a person responsible for it who's putting that content into this thing. So how to use that or effectively is the biggest challenge that we face, people resistance to change. Because they feel that no, I've been doing this task. If I start using AI tools or this thing, people will think that, oh, this was could have done in 1 hour, you were taking 3 days to do this thing. What will happen to me? I think that is another biggest obstacle that I look at, which comes from the perspective of how people look at from this data to decision impact perspective.
Just to add to the point, I think he spoke very rightly about the biggest obstacle being the right quality of data as well as the pace of data collection and monitoring. I think I just want to speak a bit more about Anand's point here about people. I think a lot of time the biggest obstacle in the corporate world is about ownership. How do we assign, like, let's say the decisions are taken, how do we convert it into perfect execution? And I think assigning ownership and accountability at multiple level of the orgs is very important to drive a lot of plans to success. So a lot of times, great analytics and let's say great strategies are there in the hard disk, and it's not executed because even when the decisions were firmly taken, we might have not informed on the accountability of people and assigning ownership to certain management data to drive that to success. So that can become a big obstacle.
So I I just want to add to this. We have, when I was in Vishes, we had one example that, we were trying to push the adoption of our supply chain act. And one fine day, we have seen that the adoption stops going up, it starts going down, and in 7 days adoption died. So I was looking at data and we realized that, for supply chain people who were tracking a given SKU, which was a very high selling SKU, the sale of that SKU was down. And they were fixing that, why the sale of the SKU is down, they were pumping in offers and everything, still things were not working fine. So I was sitting, at that time, I was a product manager, I was sitting with my CTO and what is the availability of this SKU? There was no availability data, there was just sale data. So I asked them, what is the availability of this SKU in a given region in Bangalore, or let's say, if you are aware of Bangalore, there's a place called Sajapur, there's a place called Indiranagar. And then we realized that we have no data available. And we are just bombarding on sale data. And then we backtrack on the production data and everything. We identified that that SKU was not even produced in those days. And we were taking random decisions on that data, which was absolutely wrong. It was a sale loss of 7 days. That is okay. But it gave us a huge insight that on single data points, on unilinear data point, decision making is fundamentally wrong. And users stop adopting the app itself.
That's quite an interesting example. So as students, we connect to examples, because, for example, in our case studies or in our classroom setup also, we learn a lot of case studies and understand the why, what, where it happened and how it could have been done differently. So I have a question, especially for Chandan you. What is the role of governance and literacy in making an enterprise intelligent? Now, why we are asking about this is, because Anand did shed light on culture as an important pivot to make an enterprise intelligent, right? So what we want to understand is how to use governance and literacy to achieve that.
See, any organization, forget about data. Firstly, the governance is the foundational layer on which operates an organization. Whether you talk about finance, whether you talk about HR, whether you talk about operations, supply chain, everything has a set certain rules. If you don't follow those guidelines, those procedures, the business operations will not work as per how it's supposed to work. Coming back to the data, I think that's a fundamental layer of any data organization. As a chief data officer, I think one of my biggest responsibilities is not the outcomes, but how to ensure data is governed, it's secure, it's protected, and it is made available to people who need it, the time they need it. Now, what does governance mean in data landscape? I think there are few magnitudes or basically aspects of data governance that I would bring in. One is purely, so what governance brings is it establishes trust in data in the organization. If I'm replicating, let's say, an ERP data into one business warehouse, am I ensuring that a transaction is available in the ERP as well as it's available in the warehouse? Is the data is sync, right? That means there are two facets to it. One is I'm going with technical, it's functional auditing, technical auditing. Technical is I've got 100 rows in the ERP, I've got rows in my data warehouse, that means I'm syncing. Functional is the values, is the way it's supposed to look like, is it exactly there? That's a fundamental. Second part comes is who should get the data? How do you access it? Right? How do you make it available? Is every single person in the organization allowed to take HR data? It's not a double question. Can I give compensation information to every single person, anybody? Can you look at your skills compensation? So if you've got your data in a data platform, if you've got information available, how do you ensure that those relevant information is available needed and available to only the people who need it, not to everybody. That, when you establish that governance, when you establish those rules, when you establish layers through the different systems, that is what enables trust in people that yes, this data is reliable, I can use it, it is available only to people who need it, and it is only available on need basis and not just like anybody who's going to get it. The other aspect is it available timely? If I have information, business information, like I come from industrial background, and in our industries, DCS, scholars, historians, these are like real-time assets. Now, who makes a decision in an industry organization? This is question I don't want to know. Maybe one of you want to answer. Like who makes the decision? Can somebody want to answer? Like, is it top leadership? Is it management? Middle layer? Is it like an analyst? Is it like a factory worker who makes a decision? Top leadership. Okay, a lot of us believe the decisions to be made by top leadership. I would say it's correct, but not 100%. Decision can be made by any single person in an organization to which whose work is relevant. As I was talking about, we come from industrial background, right? The census data gives the asset performance information. The CEO is not going to look at the sensor data and decide that how the wall is to be shut or not. That's to be done at the factory level. So making those kind of information available to the right person is what is the responsibility of governance and enablement of the data platforms or systems so that the users can get the information they need to make the decision they need at the time they need it. If we recollect the Bhopal gas incident, right? We never used to have great assets performance management systems or ensure that things are working fine. If you have something similar which is available, if the information is sent to a control room, these people are entitled to make decisions in whether to stop or plant machinery, which is operating effectively. Because it can be catastrophic incident, basically event to any organization if the information is not processed, is made that. So governance enables your trust in data and ensures that it is available to people.
Got it. One follow-up question we have. So since you're coming from a manufacturing or a digital background, the pace of execution of these two parameters, or these two pillars of governance and literacy, the pace of execution and acceptance, is it same as other industries? Is it more as compared to other industries? How is the pace? How are people accepting the governance and literacy parameters in this industry of financial?
Interesting question. I think FMCG world is a very different world where inside things are moving at a very fast pace. And these are low value assets typically when they're selling off, right? Versus when you look at manufacturing industry operations and all, the decision making can affect the value of the transaction very significantly. And I think that is where it differs. That in an FMCG world, if your inventory is not available, if it doesn't sell it, right? Let's say in a sale, you're selling out the sales. Maybe you don't have a available couple of boxes, it doesn't affect your overall revenue margin so much. In a industrial organization, if an asset performing poorly is not captured, is not information is not provided to the right organization layers to make the right decision, it can have an impact which is significantly larger in terms of revenue, in terms of productivity, production. I'll give you an example. If a turbine is running in a gas production, basically gas turbine, which is making electricity, if the turbine is having more vibration, it's raising more temperatures, people are not observing it. If the turbine fails, which is unplanned downtime for that energy producer, 1 day of unplanned downtime could mean millions or millions of dollars for an industry. So in an FMCG world versus industrial world, the volume of play is different, but the impact of an operational decision is significantly much higher. I would put it that way.
Got it. So that explains what you said. It's not only the top level decisions that are made, but at every level, the cascading effect that the operational decision, the supply chain decision will have in the big picture, something that impacts them. Great, great. My next question is to Devu. What you want to understand is what are the non-negotiable elements of an AI platform? We want to understand that how can we actually make an impactful deployable AI platform and what are the elements that we really should emphasize on by building one?
It's an interesting question actually. And again, I spent 18 years in the consulting or IT industry and have served across multiple verticals or sector. I mean, you can call it a manufacturing, retail, telecom. And at least in my view, is what is non-negotiable. Okay, there are something which is pretty common. I mean, wherever you want to implement AI, you need to follow those guidelines. But also there are sectoral or vertical angle as well. So depending on the business use case that you are trying to address. I'll give you an example. Maybe you are doing something for a telco industry. Any use case, it may be recommendation engine, so for example. So it basically recommends and that what is the offer? Because at the end of the day, when you are rolling out a campaign, you need to focus on the taker rate, right? How many people are actually accepting that? And if you go for a flooding technique that sending to everybody, it's your cost will be high. You are giving some offer, right? On the other hand, there are some cases when you are probably detecting kind of a malignance. There, it is very important that you should be able to reduce false negatives. I'm using some terminology again. I mean, people who are familiar with the confusion matrix, they can relate. This varies. And why? Because if it's a malignancy test, it is important that we able to reduce the false negatives, right? But in the recommendation part, it is important that we able to reduce the false positives. If you reduce false positives, your precision will go up. More precisely, you are predicting. So, depending on the business use case, what we are trying to do with AI, the different matrices are there. Sometimes I need to focus more on recall, sometimes on sensitivity, sometimes more into precision. That's the one aspect of it. The other side of it is something which is horizontal. I mean, cutting across any implementation. One is this that the context. Okay, first is data. It's a non-negotiable thing. If you don't have data, it's almost certain that your prediction will not match. I mean, whatever AI you can do. Your data should be sanitized, your data should be quality data. That's a point. Point two, you need to also add context. Now, what's the context? Context is much like a background. Well, I have some good data, but I don't know what to do with that data. So that context, and that context is closely linked to the business. So if you said somebody may be a kind of a genius data scientist, he can still come up with a model. That model may be very precise, but it may not be usable at the business context when you are actually doing something. So you need to put that business context also. That's again very important. Third part is this, well, I have data. I have my business context. I'm not acting on that. So execution is also needed. And execution means if you only act on the basis of that, you will be able to have some feedback, good, bad, ugly. The feedback is needed. Because once you start using that particular system, majority of the project fails because people don't use it. It's good to have, I have an AI system, and it's so precious that we don't let people touch it. We kept it in a storage. It don't help. You need to use it. Once you start using that set, you will have some feedback, right? It may be very good at some point of time, very bad at some point of time, and it is running middle of the hours. You need to give that feedback back to them, right? If you give that, it will further refine. We call it a reinforced learning. That part is important. Again, a very simple example. People in initial days, Grok is an AI model, I know, majority of you have heard of it, or even ChatGPT is pretty common. In initial days, those models' performance was not good. Even if you see at the initial days, the Google Maps, it was also not functioning correctly. Probably 10 years, 12 years, 20 back from today. It was not functioning that correctly. Maybe 10 years. But now it is more accurate. Why? Because the more and more people are using it, they are giving feedback, and that feedback is somehow helping that particular algorithm to fine-tune it further so that it can generate more accurate, more precise output. So this reinforced learning is needed. And if you really want to achieve scale, you can't go ahead with a supervised learning. It's not possible. You can use supervised learning in a college project. You have limited set of images and you are trying to classify. Very simple example, AI algorithm to classify. Call a dog, cat a cat. Yeah, I can do it, right? To computer vision. But if you want to do it at a larger scale, you don't have that much images. So you will need to rely on the reinforced learning. You need to go ahead with the, I mean, again, for supervised, again, for everybody who are not into this, for supervised learning, you need labeled data sets. So you first need to train the model saying, this is cat, this is dog. Then model can do that, right? But for a very large scale implementation, you can't follow this approach. You then need to rely on a clustering algorithm, not classification, which is unsupervised. Now for clustering, it comes with certain challenge. What is that challenge? Sometimes it hallucinates. And that's the reason sometimes you are getting the LLMs or a large language model, you are getting hallucinations, right? Because it's a self-learning. But it's still able to perform at that level because it is not relying on any individual for learning. You don't need to label those data sets. It is getting that data sets to the feedback. That's a self-learning part. And that's the reason how they grow so large. So for any model, any AI, that feedback part is also important. And more use, this model will become. And that's initially I mentioned about the decision intelligence move. If you see that post execution, there is one word was the refinement. That refinement is needed so that that model can, the next case model performs more wisely, more better. It's like for anybody. I mean, you all are students now, you will be joining an organization, and your on-the-job learning that will actually make you a successful person in the future, right? It is only the base. Whatever you are learning here, we all have learned. Then our on-the-job learning is basically giving us lot more exposure, and that feedback.
Got it, sir. Thanks a lot for explaining succinctly the key elements, having the right data, having good insights, execution with guardrails, as you mentioned earlier. Thanks a lot for that. My next question is to Anand. So you are sitting at a position where you are the one who are taking decisions, which domain to utilize, where to put money into when it comes to AI execution. What I want to understand is how you are able to make the balance between the governance of these models, which data to fetch and then get the problem statement and hence then solve that. So how are you selecting these pointers, keeping balance between the data governance and the insight into the intelligence of the enterprise?
Good question. Most difficult part for a CTO, I don't know. Where everybody says, give me this, give me that, and nobody, and CFO says, I will give you only this much money. The biggest challenge. I think I'll pick up from what you said is that impact on that decision. You talk about recommendation engine. So I think first thing I would say is that where do you put money? And I think all MBAs are sitting here. They will say first, ज़्यादा पैसा बने वहीं पे पैसा लगाओ. First thing first. So first is ROI, of course. I mean, where I will get a better ROI, that is where I will put money. Now, when you talk about ROI, and I use, you just give an example of from a recommendation engine. Now, while recommendation is a very commonly used these days, whether it is any consumer-facing industry, whether it is telecom, BFSI, e-com, because it helps you to take decision quickly and helps you increase your revenue or reduce your customer churn. See, the cost of acquisition is far higher. I mean, if I'm able to retain my customer, that is by spending some X amount, the cost of acquisition could be X plus plus. So I think that is first thing is the very simple the ROI perspective, which I will talk about from the putting the money. Second is in terms of the scalability. Okay. Now, recommendation engine is a model which is highly scalable. It can be used across the function, across the company, in case depending on the industry which I belong to. As compared to somebody comes to me, hey, I need some AI model which will help me to increase my own productivity. So there is no ROI coming. So it is scalable only for a particular function as compared to the particular organization. That is the second thing I will talk about. Third thing could be in terms of the impact of ad putting money. So here when we talk about the recommendation is an example that we talk about, there is a huge significant impact across the organization, across the customer brand itself. Now, I mean, so I'll give an example of Amazon, not of Netflix, because we just talked about Netflix. So when you start searching something on the Amazon, next time when you log in, you get something like that. So because it realized that you were trying to do search something, you were trying to buy something, but you did not complete that action. So when I go back, instead of starting from the scratch, it gives me, I have a platform where I start from where I left it. So that is where I would put more money into it. I think that is what it is fundamental on where I would put money. Now coming back to governance part of it. So we all know about, and I'll go back and ask this question to you quickly first before I answer more on that. There are a lot of expresses are being constructed in India, right? Okay. So if I ask anybody want to answer, what are the key features of an expressway? So 2-3 key features of an expressway. Anyway, yeah. Yeah. Number of lanes. Okay. Anybody? Anyone? Last person. Sorry. Yeah. Okay. So if somebody said speed, connectivity, fast, number of seconds connected. Now look at from this. Now convert this into the AI world. So we have an expressway, and I will make it so. Then on both sides express there are crash cars, right? Then there are lanes clearly demarcated that in this lane you run with this. Then there are CCTV cameras. Then there are speed monitoring cameras. Then they have emergency telephone booths available on that. Convert this into the AI this thing. Expressway is what expressway is the data. Availability of the clean data, whether you may want to use the nice term, data lake, snowflake, all that, but it is a data, clean data which is available to you for you to play. What are the crash guard on both sides? It is the security and governance built into it. You cannot upload PII data. You cannot send that data. So your exit tollways, when you exit, so you cannot send data this outside. What is the ethical governed use of AI? All that processes, policies, PI, securities, cyber security, these are your crash cards and and your CCTV camera seeing that what we're doing it. So that is what it is. Your emergency booth could be your telephone booth could be your incident management system. Now what this helps is that so that is the central part of the governance. You have to live with it. You can't move beyond you can move beyond that boundaries basically. Then I give you a car. So you know on an expressway you are free to drive whatever car you want. What is the car? It is nothing but a model. Whichever model you want to run within that governance which is given to you, you are free to experiment with it. Okay. I think that is the analogy I would give to from that perspective.
That's a great analogy. We all were able to really distribute the car or the complete road, clean data, how to make it more insightful and everything. But just continuing with what you said, what we want to understand is from you also, and Gaurav, I want to understand from you also, when it comes to, since we've shared like an ROI, so how to decide whether the investment should be developed in-house. When I'm developing AI platform, should it be in-house? Should it be outsourced? And what are the pitfalls that organizations or leaders they get into when they take a decision? We just want to understand from the past what are the challenges they faced when they took the wrong turn in the highways.
So this is the question that we answer every day. See, it's a double-edged sword kind of snap. It all depends on the GTM strategy. Okay. So there is a long-term strategy, there is a short-term strategy. And if your short-term strategy, the amount of money getting involved is much higher, you always buy. Okay. And the only caveat in this statement is what kind of proprietary data or what kind of proprietary information that is getting into that particular SaaS that you are buying. If the balance of it is moving up and down, one finding you will decide now I need to build this in. So I'll give you one basic example when I was in delivery. So I was a software engineer at that time, and we had a system called which used to provide we used to use Google Maps to provide the end mile rider to delivery. And since many of you might not be aware that Google Maps has a price attached to the B2B customer. Okay, and we had around 20,000 riders at that time. So price was very high, but we had no choice because shipment was deliver करना है. Okay, so we talked to Google कि थोड़ा सामान वाली क्या है, थोड़ा कम कर दो ऐसा वैसा, and we started. Then I started a separate project called OS2, which is an open source route network planning software. And after 2.5 years, you are able to replace Google Maps completely with the data of Google. Because our riders were following Google Maps and we will collect each of these data through कैसे जा रहा है, कहाँ जा रहा है. And at the end of the day, for an e-commerce hubs like Bangalore or Delhi NCR or some of these tier 1, tier 2 cities, we had rooftop level tagging. That this person is residing in this location, without having Google Maps. And that's how the decision was made. So our GTM was we need to provide last mile tracking to the end consumer that you are going to be your shipment is going to be delivered tomorrow. This is how it is going to follow the path. We did the GTM very fast. We onboarded with Google Maps and we did it fast. Then it took us 2.5 years to develop the entire solution and replace. Because the amount of money, the ROI versus margins always win.
So you asked a couple of questions, we have one question. So build versus buy, my taking very simple. It's while it is a daily discussion, as you rightly said, and between technology and build versus buy. If something can be used off the shelf, just buy. Don't need to invest huge amount of money because you are not somebody has put brain behind the other technical specialist, so just buy it. But if something needs a extensive amount of customization because your business processes are not very unique, then it is always better to develop it in-house. As you were saying in your scenario also. So that is the one take on the build versus buy. I always follow. The second question again on the what you said on the ROI thing. My thing is simple. Again, it is very simple philosophy. Fail fast, recover fast. I mean, not every pilot will go into production. It's okay. I mean, kill it and take a decision. That is also an intelligent decision. So why do we need to sustain a pilot which is not yielding results and you're pumping money into it? Don't do that.
Anand, when it comes to ROI, one thing we talked about is money. How much person into it. You talked about how much complexity or customization that platform needs. Can you tell us what are the other parameters of ROI? Are we taking convenience also into consideration? Are we taking privacy also into consideration? So what are the top five, let's say top five key pillars which will define that ROI?
Yeah, money is one. Second is what kind of KPIs are we tracking? So for example, in the last example which I took from delivery, one of the ROIs is time to deliver. Okay, because manpower is a cost. If a person, and the example is sir has taken up about expressways. Expressways are designed based on throughput between two points. If the throughput is high enough, we can determine that we need an expressway between these 2 points. And the KPI for that is, for example, let's say Delhi Mumbai expressway journey used to take 22 hours. Now Gadkari sir has taken a KPI that I want to reduce it to 12 hours. He is able to do it to 17 hours right now, but his KPI is 12. That is 1 hour. But there are derived ROI. Once I am able to do it 12 hours, then my truck will be able to do 2 journeys a day. And that will give a huge edge in the entire transportation industry. Okay, so there are primary ROI, there are secondary ROIs, and there are some feel good ROI that we give with us. This is what we have done. Okay, so for customer facing brands, one of the major ROI is quality. If through any kind of automation, if through intelligence, I am able to improve the quality, both from product side as well as from the consumer interaction side, that is one good factor that we always keep doing. So these 3 or 4 items which I always feel are part of the KPIs we track for all projects, whether it's a small POC project or a full-fledged implementation project. KPIs are always tracked.
I don't think optimizing manpower is another thing. And another give an example of feel good. So there was an marketing campaign which was run by Idea Cellular ages old back, which was walk the talk. Correct? So there was a hidden message in it that if you, while talking, if you walk, you will have a health benefits. So there was no direct ROI, but it was perceived ROI. So if how many people are talking about my campaign is also an ROI from a marketing perspective.
Let me add some my right to it because being from the finance function, I think everyone thinks that I will think about money. But that's my only job. But you asked a very valid question. What can the ROI mean for an org? Does it only be restricted to money? I think to expand on what both the gentlemen have said, I'll give you an example. And this happened like with me, as I am saying to you, 2 gentlemen talking to each other, talking about should we do an IPL campaign for Swiggy for 50 CR rupees in an ad. And they just pulled me into the room to decide. And they were just starting about how brands have successfully, made themselves more publicly available, awareness. And this happened to me when they just pulled me into it, saying, now we have 550 CR rupees, can we do it? And of course, one was the ROI, where is the money part of the discussion. But I think for me to answer that question really well, I needed to understand perspectives about customer experience, brand recall, um, repeat rates of my order in future. How can I grow my organic rate of marketing to attract more orders in future with this campaign? And of course, the money angle. So there are a lot of aspects to every decision. Sometimes the ROI could be as good as saving on money and time of people. Sometimes it can be very contextual. It could be about the metrics, which the org, values. And of course, we did do the campaign, but it was not for the money reason. What Sweetie actually did was it waited for another year. It expanded very heavily in 200 cities, 100 plus cities before it went to an IPL campaign, and made that campaign much more successful because of the reach and the other factors. So.
I think everyone was related to basically ROI in terms of dollar, talk about like creating value. I think when we look at my organization currently, we look at slightly different also. Not just in terms of the dollar value that we make, but what is the value that you can create for your customer? Maybe you are creating a product which is $100,000. Can you save your customer a couple of $1 million? Can it be sustainable for customers? So for example, a lot of industrial assets are long-term assets. They run for like 30 years, 50 years. And you don't want to modernize their infrastructure just for the sake of modernizing it. How can you make that product more smarter? By introducing modular components, by introducing technologies, which will create value for customers. It may not give you a lot of money in terms of dollar benefits, but what it's doing is it's being sustainable towards the organizations, the earth, the people. And I think that's another facet of looking at the ROI. Are we being just money centric, or are we being sustainable? Are we being focusing on creating value for customers? And then that is our dimension that we typically don't look from generally when we look from the ROI perspective. I think that is another dimension of that.
That's it. Actually, you redefined the definition of ROI from just from company's perspective to how it will add value to the company. But my question is, are these the two extremes? What decision is saying, what my gut is saying? Are these the two extremes where we can either stand at left or right? Or have you, and we would love to listen to any example of your life where you got that dilemma, where I want to stand, or maybe you choose any middle path. I mean, explain us how to take a decision between data, what data is saying, and what our data is saying.
Firstly, there is a situation where data and your gut can say the same thing. Usually that happens in our daily lives. We take decisions basis data, and our gut feeling is also saying the same thing. But a lot of times in enterprise, we act without data, or we have a hunch about consequences. And it's not a conflict, but it's a situation to understand deeper. And I think I'll give you the framework first. When I'm very strong on data, and my hunches or my intuition is weak, I take a small bit or a small pilot and execute it, try to get more. Try to see what would be the max downside. If my data is weak, but my intuition is very high, then I might need to understand my downside and reduce my exposure. And of course, if both of them converge, I will go very aggressively on this. And just to add to the point, to give you an example where, let's say, the data was, you asked me an example for where the data was not there or where the data is there.
Data is there, but the direction in which data is telling you to go is different from what you is telling you to go.
I'll give you an example of what we all witnessed after COVID. I'll take an example of a very common strategy which the companies were adopting. And I'll give you an example of Sweetie. Sweetie is a tech player in delivery space. So after COVID, we were in that discount war with competitors. And I knew at the back of my mind that this will not continue. This is not a good strategy to create. And we were in that growth strategy phase. And my intuition always said that this is not a strategy for the long run. We will deplete our capital with this burn. And the data, I did not have data to support that the growth stop. Sorry, I did not have any data to say that the past trend will not continue because it was a cycle. But I think across the macro streams, the capital, what happened was right after 2022, we heard about investing capital not being available, the funding being tight, and the cost of capital again rising high. So you saw a lot of companies cutting down on manpower, stopping the discounting warfare, avoiding freebies to the customer. And it was primarily because the intuition that in the long run the strategy will not sustain made sense. And it made sense to the numbers. But of course, the data on the contrary was not there. And eventually it did happen. The capital got expensive. The crazy salaries we got for tech teams reduced down, as you can see. There were times when a tech employee had 5 hours because the shortfall of talent. Now it is not there. And yeah, so in the long run, I think you have to bet on your intuition as well, but you have to take calculated decisions. And yeah, and if both of them are still in conflict, it's better to take a side and take a decision. But of course, understanding your downside, understanding your risk. I'll give you an example, one more example in the lending or the fintech space. Today, as a new company, we do not invest a lot into our fraud detection or our ability to analyze risk. But if a company who's selling a loan product in a minute to a customer through a mobile app, this can be an area of investment which might require a lot of security features, ability to detect frauds, and even there is no history of a fraud of magnitude. One might need to invest in it because the downside can be catastrophic. So sometimes, even without a lot of, let's say, prehistorical evidence, one might need to protect the enterprise value and take those decisions and make some investment in this regard.
Got it. In fact, if I just mention an example, that has happened for one of the manufacturing firms. They are in steel manufacturing and they use, I would say, the old technology of the laser varnish. And so they use steel breakage, they use induction varnish to generate steel, they produce billet at the moment. One of the challenges that they are having that they are getting some kind of a hidden cracks in the billets that they are generating. And obviously it's a large factory, they have metallurgy teams and all these things are there. But when they have some gut feelings, they tried that, but it didn't help much. So they approached PwC as a firm that we can actually help them. So we have also an operation consulting division. So they are the people from the industry. So we thought of kind of a go together, so technology consulting and operation consulting together. Because we know that they already have tried the traditional work. So what we did basically, we took some data points from, because obviously the gut feeling was not helping at that point of time. So we took some data point from the spectrometer, we took some data point from the redefining furnaces and all other points. And we got a very interesting output. I can clear the statistics there. So we do a MSPC, which is multivariate statistical process control, and we figure out that in a certain percentage ratio between two different chemicals are basically playing the crucial role. As they have limited control on the raw material, like the seed package. So depending on the nature of seed that they are using and how it is being distributed, with what configuration, it is basically generating it. So that insight we got while we are analyzing the data. And those relations are not metallurgically proven. So the people who are looking into that, they are looking for what is the common cause of such kind of a defect in a material. But data basically helped them to figure out such corner scenarios, which otherwise was not available to them. So, in my view, these two are not in conflicting. Gut feeling obviously will be there. The people who's running a business for 20 years, this gut feeling definitely have some meaning, right? But these two always should be in a complementary space. So they will complement each other. They will not compete. They will not should not contradict. And even they should contradict, then there should be someone to break the tie. But that way we can actually help that organization kind of reduce that such kind of a and it's huge loss for them as well. Because there is a crack, they cannot sell it in their primary market, so they need to be processed and all such cost association. So that way, I would rather say this is in complementary thing. They should complement each other's skills and both gut feeling and data. That's how our organization should.
And a lot of times, just to add to this perspective, a lot of times intuition is more important when there are structural changes in trends. It might, like a lot of good intuition is about when people, our leaders can see the change before things happen. For example, Microsoft invested billions in OpenAI, and a lot of companies did invest a lot of money before time, and we saw the monetization now. Today we are seeing services being advertised in India for the first time. Like I'm talking about a SaaS service like Gemini, or this did not happen in India earlier. Might be US a bit more, but that's the change. So people who sometimes one needs to make investments basis in an intuition about structural changes in trends.
Okay. Just want to add to this.
My viewpoint is the gut feeling is the real reinforced learning of your brain. Because we have seen, so for example, my generation, we have seen TV being terrorized, then the internet came, then the e-commerce boom came. So we have seen a lot of changes. And when you are going, when you are going through those much amount of changes, then your brain says that such kind of change is possible. Whether data says or not, it is a very different story. There are a lot of business cases where Indian leaders, Indian tech leaders even thought that AI will come. There is a case in Infosys also, where they decided against it. And the case which he has mentioned that Microsoft decided for it. It all depends how our past learning has been gone through and how our life has been gone through. And it's a reinforced learning of our value.
Got it. So, what we want to do right now is we heard about the different domains that all of you said. We want to do an activity here. Let's assume that we are a part of a boardroom, and the boardroom caters to a company which owns a digital platform. Our problem statement is to reduce the customer churn. And I just want to understand from you, Abhinav. So when the AI team will approach you, what all insights, data points, parameters you will ask before approving the budget?
I'll try to play my role here from functional finance in this discussion. I want to keep it very simple for different teams to understand what would be given approvals for, or what kind of decisions are made. So just to answer it in a very simple line, I can give you an example also. But whatever makes a positive impact to the payment will be rewarded more. And of course, there are other metrics which the org might decide. For example, customer experience, NPS, it could be quality of the product. If the ROI plus some of the critical metrics to the org are favorable, definitely I make that decision. I can give an example also, but I think I might want to hear views from others.
So, from consumer side, we always look at the funnel. I want to see where the drop has happened and why that drop has happened. So, people may have random answers for the drop, but data will tell you that why that particular drop at a particular time that funnel has happened. So, such questions because I am from leadership team in my division, such questions comes every day. This is what the campaign was, and this is the success KPI, this is the data right now. And most of the time, we always go to please tell me, please explain this data to me. Each step by step. If X user came and Y has, we have got the revenue of Y at the final point, then by each of these steps, what were the friction points? And what kind of friction point were there? What the payment friction points? For example, let's say in one of the consumer apps in my earlier organization had added an extra step before checkout. And that caused a drop of 30%. So for an organization or for an individual who has gone through a lot of B2C systems, such things could have been caught at much earlier level than putting this data in front of leadership and ask him to say that what is this.
I think I'll elaborate on the case study a bit more so that it can be a bit more clearer to the group. Let's say the AI team comes for a ask for 5 CR rupees and they have proposed a model which can reduce the churn rate by, let's say, 3% for the company. And let's say the current churn rate is 20%. So the gentleman here is asking for a 5 CR budget, saying that if I make example, 1 lakh rupees per customer or 3% of my customer base, and the resultant value is 6 CR. Can you please approve my budget for 5 CR? Let's say this hypothetical example, the gentleman already demonstrates to me the ROI is positive. Do I make the decision? I think what I can do practically is first try to review that his data assumptions are correct. Let's say get validated whether by the analytics team or support of my business finance team that whatever data usage he's looking at, that is quality, that is correct, that is scalable, can be applied on the. Secondly, I think stress test his assumptions. Will the revenue be forecasted like what he's projecting, which is let's say an incremental revenue of 6 CR. And secondly, stress test is cost assumption. Maybe he might be talking only about investments of the new software. He might not be talking about the manpower which might be required to run the software, or he might not be about talking about the cost of manpower to parallelly be deployed. So, trying to make sure his assessment of revenue, cost, or risk is accurate, I can go ahead and make that decision.
Got it, got it. So let's assume that the assumptions done by the AI team is right. Let's assume that the model is making sense theoretically and you're practically saying the practical implementation will be better.
I'm not rewarding the model. I'm not rewarding the accuracy of the model. My decision is not rewarding models and its accuracy. My decision is more about rewarding outcomes for the company and the cash flows.
Got it.
That is my lens of my function.
Got it, got it. So my question to you is that when AI team's proposal is being passed, what all things you ask for from the other leadership verticals in order to make it possible that the complete execution will be because you talk about execution a couple of things ago. So how will you ensure what data will you fetch from the leadership verticals to ensure that the execution is seamless?
Okay. It's an interesting question. And to solve any problem, I mean, AI is not something a magic one. So there are always, from business standpoint, what model can do? Model can analyze a number of data points and can suggest these are the critical data points for this particular prediction. It's a picture. Now, certain data points, and we can very well say, and when I say data point, I'm basically saying these are the independent variables, right? Now, I can very well say that through PCA and other analysis, what we do that, and I'm assuming data is correct, first of all, so I'm not getting into that complexity. So I can simply say that these are the important data points. If these data points are available, I can give you this particular output with certain level of precision. Now the question back to me is, whether those data points, whatever I am saying, and I am working in silo, so whatever I am saying, whether those data point is at all controllable or not. Example, Suppose I am doing it for a telco. It's a telco, they build a data platform and the churning is a problem. Now maybe I have seen from the data point that trade says majority of the churning is happening from the bordering territories. Now in bordering territories, you have a BTS, you know BTS, right? Those towers, telecom towers. Now those BTS, it has a government regulation, we have to reduce the effectiveness, the power at the bordering territories. So even though it's a, for that we are losing, people are losing network, they are churning out, I can't help much. So that's not something in organizations control. Second part, I might see that these are the people who are going to churn out because they have reduced their usage. Now to come back, what strategy we to offer? That is again, I cannot say. I can say this is your layer of customers or subscribers who are going to potentially churn. Now, what you are going to offer them, what level of investment you are willing to take, that depends on too many parameters. For telecom, it maybe depends on ARPU, APPM. So there are different matrices are there. Now that's definitely I would like to understand from the leaders what strategy we are going to see. And then on the basis of that, we can further fine tune that segment. That then in that case, this is not my segment. My segment is maybe a subset of that, whom we really want to retain. Right? That's a second part of the decision. Third part of the decision is definitely that I can build a model, that model can say, but at the end of the day, when you are giving that particular offer to them, there is a process layer. So it may be that your sales executives who are need to in touch with your customers, whether they are doing their job. Because computer is not talking to them. Computer is just giving a recommendation. Model is just giving a recommendation. But what action is being really taken by the people who are at their responsibility, whether they are doing their job correctly. If not, then this model would fail. So I definitely need to understand the support I am going to get from that. So at least in top of my mind, these three are the parameter I will definitely seek the support from the departments to reduce the churn.
Great. So we talked about the model and its outcomes speculations. We talked about how leadership will be aligned. Now, what we want to understand, especially from our view, ITC is known for the pace, quality, and it is one of the companies who dived into Industry 4.0 initially. And so now they are adding into AI also. What we want to understand is when it comes to implementing this digital infrastructure without hurdling the pace with which ITC works. Then how do we ensure that? We don't want to cross the pace of production, we don't want to stop the pace of outcomes, but we want to implement this digital infrastructure because leadership and the financial team is aligned. Then how do we do that?
So at our scale, nothing gets implemented from day. So we run small experiments. So let's say on a $1 million scale or something, we run an experiment of thousands of dollars. And if that experiment is successful, then we determine what kind of success it has. Whether it is a success of manpower reduction, man-hour reduction, not manpower reduction, man-hour reduction, or whether it's a success of revenue enhancement, all of those points. Then we try to imbibe that thing in the current process. Nothing can take place. It gets enhanced. So the current process will become more intelligent. And in a span of 2 years, 3 years, the older process will get. But it all starts changes with what I can say in that term, change of a color font. It will start changing from change of a color font. Small changes will start creeping in. And then one fine day, the entire older infrastructure or older thing will go away, the new system will get. But there will not be any change in how the user is experienced. There are proper trainings done for each and every change that we are bringing in, whether the life of an individual or whether on a given screen put it at any system. But everything is incremental. Nothing is done in one shot.
It goes hand in hand, little incremental steps towards advancement, right?
Yeah, at our scale, one stop is or not a solution.
Makes sense. So now we have implemented the model into our company. So after its implementation, how should we track the outcomes?
See, I mean, we talked about budget, we talked about the churn prevention using some of the models. I think, so you do we talk about stress test, or we can call it an A/B test, whatever you may want to call it out. Ultimately, is that in a control group, which was being using results, they are working without using anything, and then you have a control which is using some AI model. If you feel that the results are significantly better, you continue to run it. If it is not, then you just shut it down. I think that is one of, because, I mean, CEO is not interested in knowing that whether what is the tracking error of your model. He's more interested in revenue, तो आ रहा नहीं आ रहा तो नहीं आ रहा. Okay, I think that is what we talk about from the perspective of whether it is having a business impact or not. Ultimately, if I'm deploying a churn prevention product, if my, and as he said that I asked for 5 crore budget, the projection of 6 crore. He gave me 5 crore sanction, 5 crore budget, but the output showed that I'm going to get maybe around 1 crore rupees or 2 crore rupees on the benefit. On an investment of 5 crore instead of plus, it is minus. It doesn't make any business sense to learn with it. I think that is, so what is happening, something what happens is that as a customer service, in the under the garb of preventing customers churn, we overboard in terms of giving the freebies to the customer. So instead of being while the intention was right, instead of giving the positive, you start giving the negative. That you give an offer to a customer who as such was not going to churn. So that unless we see that holistically in that model and then give offers, so sometimes it could give revenue drainage instead of having the revenue upliftment. Now, that is one thing. So now in terms other thing I already talked about, we talked with that fail fast to recover fast. I mean, I think it is not making sense to shut it down. Why do we need to run it? Except that, I mean, no model can, not every model can go into production. Except that you test it. Unless you test it, you can't. Not every model will succeed. Not every strategy will succeed. Take small baby steps, and then something what gives you the better exponential benefit. You scale it up to that direction.
Just to add to this point, I think a lot of monitoring systems are put in place also to review and govern the outcomes. For example, a lot of digital marketing for any company today is reviewed daily, either by now it might be reviewed by, let's say, a machine where we can see where the marketing campaigns run digitally are not giving returns for the company. And today, technology allows us to monitor transactions real time as well. So one can trigger changes in the system, recommend decisioning to management teams to pull off the plug or have a kill switch. Predefine that if the outcomes, let's say, digress from the desired levels by X percentage, one can make X trigger or a Y trigger. So I think monitoring is very important after implementation of AI tools is done, because the ego model runs very well. Garbage continues to be garbage out, and if you have, let's say, a predefined cycle of reviews in your company, it could be monthly, it could be quarterly, but sometimes money goes in a day or an hour, or the models allow it to be reviewed after. So having those key checks and systems to review the AI usage is very important after implementation and approvals.
Just to quickly add one interesting point. See, earlier for us to analyze the revenue uplift daily used to take n number of days or weeks probably. But what AI has done, which is good part of it, that now same thing you can do maybe in a day itself. So week, months have come into the days or hours itself. I think so you are able to take a better decision on your investment within a day or so. lose less and really get better benefit and do much more trial and error in terms of your models and other things.
Got it. So now what we want is we want to complete the circle. Chandan, you shed light about the broad definition of ROI, where you talked about the impact it will have on the customers. So after defining, aligning the leadership and subsequently implementing and tracking, what we want to understand is how should we make sure that the steps that we have taken is ethically correct and is not alienating customers?
Ethics and customers. I think a lot of salespeople will like contradict on these 2 points there because everybody wants to make margins, sell, and people do go unethical ways and making sales and all that kind of thing. When we build systems, right, I think what really needs to happen is how do you put some guardrails around systems that it can give indicators that things are going wrong. We built a system last year, and I'm going to give you an example of what we did. It's called Data Guard in our business. And it's looking at the indirect sales and services and third-party sales. Channel sales. And it does exactly what we're discussing. How do we track? Are we doing something which is causing an issue later on today? And is this gonna make my channel partners, my customers move away from us? The system basically looks at millions of transactions every day. It looks at the thresholds that have been set for a country. It looks at the median pricing of selling. What is a max? What is a minimum? There are deltas which have been set by leaders in an organization in that country. You say, what are those transactions? Show me where we went beyond the discount that we thought is an appropriate one. Is this going to cause me a problem eventually? Am I giving too much of a discount to a third-party supplier who may be making more money and then funding it back to the customer? Now that may not sound like a simple thing, but it eventually can cause you a face loss because it might be a bribery kind of thing. So how do you bring in these checks and balances in your AI system for the guardrails? Reading your data, deciphering through it, giving alerts, giving proactive mechanisms, people to say yes, there are incidents which you need to check, correct it now before it becomes urgent. And I think a lot of factors come into play, right? For example, I'm not a very person familiar with churn because our business is a long cycle business. We don't sell products which are like today, I'm buying from Swiggy, tomorrow I'm buying from Zomato, day after I'm buying from Zomato, our customers are long cycle ones. However, it still impacts our customers and is my revenue drop happening in 6 months? Why is this there's no order in last 6 months? Is it because my discounting strategies change? Or is it my competitor is giving a better value? And I think bringing those elements also in your systems kind of gives, I would say, guardrails and gives you sort of indicators that why is the churn changing and how do we make it more ethical that I don't go and offer people some discounting strategy, or I may not go and approach it in a way which is unethical to sell. And data is the indicator. It's a big indicator, just you can put systems around it to decide what the information given back to people who make the decision.
That's great, sir. That's a complete circle on what we discussed about. So, ladies and gentlemen, it was a wonderful discussion that we had today. Diverse opinions about different things, but all landed on one path. And the path or the bridge or the highway was between insight and impact. We did discuss about what are the different data sets we should dive into, in how to gather insights from it, the guardrails that we should set about, the cultural governance and ethical standards to follow. And once we have defined what all data we have, once the team has told us how to speculate the outcomes, the cascading effect it will have, and once the outcomes are defined, how to align the leadership, subsequently taking incremental steps rather than taking a big loop. That is how it circulated everything, and we understood as MBA students how data, insights, lead to impactful decision, so that we are able to make not only changes or analytics, but using those things to make real impact in the world and making this world a better place. Thank you everyone, thanks a lot. Now what I want to do is, we want to understand your questions. The panel is pretty excited. Any question that you have, put it on the table and we will try to answer. Please point the mic.
So, my question is about artificial intelligence. All of you, what do you think about regulating the artificial intelligence in the current scenario? In what is the reason? What you have, like, is there any need to regulate the artificial intelligence? If yes, what is the reason behind it? And if no, what's the reason?
If I want to take a first step to it, so when you say regulate, what exactly you are referring to?
Sir, like currently artificial intelligence is being used in two different sides. Like, one side is using it as a productive measure. A lot of users are using it to their benefit. But the other side is also using it for the like dangerous point of view. Like, a lot of people are using it in a different way, bad way. So is there any need to regulate it by the government?
Definitely. In fact, I will say two different angles to it, to the perspective to the question that you raised. I'm not sure how much you are familiar, but there is a term point called a fair usage policy. Now, when you train a kind of a large language model, it's a transformer model, by the way, but when you're going to train those, you use a lot of data sets, right? And not all the data that you have generated. You as a farm, you as an entrepreneur. It's an internal that you are watching. So it can happen that there may be a content or maybe an art created by Salvador Dali, right? But your model get trained from that, and it is generating art looks like the art from Salvador Dali. There is a kind of model called the GAN, adversarial network, which basically kind of a meta-chita kind of concept. I'm making something, my counterpart is questioning that. I'm again fine-tuning it and generating something more fine. And you cannot even differentiate if there is a proper art generated by, drawn by Picasso, Dali, or somebody else, and art generated by a GAN network. It's very difficult. Now, question is this: what is a fair usage policy? First of all, I'm using a material which is we are making copyright infringement, maybe, right? Or if so, but something that till now, at least to my knowledge base, this is called as a part of the fair usage policy, and a lot of such discussions are happening across the country. To what extent we can contain the input to them, but those are the input side. Now there's an output side as well. That output side, if you want to sell and content, maybe an art piece generated by your model to somebody saying this is an original painting from Picasso, then you are violating, right? That is the rules are there and government is regulating that. But the input side, rules are still not there, but there are a lot of cases I know at least in US side and even in India as well, following this DPDP. The people are asked questioning. Second is the PII data, privacy. Because some of the data sets, whatever we are doing is open to the internet, and again the model is learning from that. To what extent we can curtail that? It's again in a decent assessment. Third part is this that regulation in terms of the ethical usage of the model. Like if some model is functioning, but Anandji mentioned a few minutes back, like ERP migration, it generally takes an year, 1.5 years for large scale ERP migration. I don't know whether you heard the name of Anthropic. It's a company that's making bots, which actually agents, which actually can do the job of a developer. So it is affecting a large amount, and if IT industry is going to get, and it has already started getting affected. If you follow, that's all the OEMs like Amazon, Microsoft, they are reducing this stuff. So this, it is having an ethical consideration to what extent we can use it. Fourth, it's more like a misinformation and disinformation. What is disinformation? It is a piece of information. Okay, misinformation may be a hallucination as well. The model is hallucinating because it is unsupervised model, right? Self-spread unsupervised model. And that disinformation and purposefully using that to spread propaganda. Now that is something again regulated. And government, you probably have heard it. Previously it was 36 hours that government gave it to those Meta and the other companies that to constrain such spread. Now government is asking if you can do it within 3 hours. So that you can still constrain to what extent this post or such messages can reach the larger users. So misinformation, that's limited government can do, but disinformation government is trying to regulate. Similarly, from input side is a fair usage, but if you're trying to sell something generated by the model and saying it's an original artwork by somebody, then you are being regulated. So that's how it is. And it's still a gray area in majority of the cases. That how this can be improved. But it's a very good question actually, keeping the context, and I ask my panel that members also to take on that.
I think it's a very good question, and I think we all are trying to work towards building code of ethics and code of compliances and laws around AI usage. I think this is an evolving subject. While the commercial use case of AI products and services are still the governments are also figuring it out what tools to create. And I think the group has mentioned some of the key areas where the government is working on. I think, but it might still take us time to develop all the principles and common laws. There can be lots of consequences and risk of not regulating. So definitely it is needed.
I'll focus on the why part of your question. Regulations, everything has a regulation, right? Simple example. I think you might have read in the news about Anthropic denying US Department of Defense not allowing its models to be used for autonomous operations. Imagine a nuclear silo being managed by the AI system, making an autonomous decision to fire a missile when it's not needed to. That's the answer to why. Are you okay for an AI to make that decision, which can be catastrophic, which can be life-changing, or extension level limit? And I think that is why even the simplest ways of operations, we look at AI, why should it not have guardrails? Simplest example, ID service test. I think pretty much everybody is aware. Your computer has a problem, you can go to the IT service desk and say, hey, I've got a problem. This guy looks at it and says, okay, there's a problem in it. You probably need to get it formatted. Let us take a backup of the data builder. What if there is an agentic system which looks at it, identifies the problem, formats it without even asking you? Your data is gone. That's a simple example. I think that is the reason that why is, are you okay in making AI take a decision? If you're comfortable with that level of autonomy that it will make a decision in the regulated aspect or it has a guardrails, yes, why not? But if you're not comfortable, then yes, you have to have regulations, you have to have checks and balances, have a human take a decision, the rest you don't.
I'll just add two quick examples. One is the deepfake. Without carbon, you can't do a deepfake. That is one thing. Second is very recently, couple of last 2 years back, there was a story. The production of a startup went down because the developer used AI to write a module and pushed it into, and even manager reviewed through AI. Everything was AI, and that code got pushed into the production. and production went down, and it took them 2 days to identify what the error was. See, traditionally, how the coding used to be done, you have objects, you have containers, you use classes, and you reuse them. So AI never does that. AI to what you so the same 100 line code, AI will write everything fresh, so they become to 20,000 line code. So that is why you need all those guardrails, checks, regulations, and all those things. I hope that answers your question.
Hello, sir. This is Manshika. So, sir, my question is for you, Anand, sir. I think you mentioned that when we need to, say, invest in digitizing certain systems, you mentioned three metrics. First was, of course, the ROI, second was scalability, and third was the impact across the organization. But, sir, sometimes what happens is that these metrics may, contradict each other. Say for a fact that if an organization is too old, they might have certain legacy systems that will take a long run, say in the long term, it will generate, say, the most revenue and will also be scalable for that matter, but it will take a lot of capital upfront. Or certain system which is generating a decent ROI and you can easily digitize it. So also when you have to take tricky calls like these, what would you go for?
Interesting. So, like there are legacy organizations which have developed code in-house. You need significant amount of understanding to even modernize it, and it requires significant amount of cost. So, because it's a legacy system, scalability is also a challenge. Okay. Now that is where your hybrid clouds are coming into picture. So what you can do, phase one, you can do lift and shift. Phase one. Then you start slowly modernization. Because unless you modernize, you will not get the benefit of moving to the cloud technology. Since you are already into production, you cannot stop the production and say, I will take 3 months downtime, let me modernize and I will save cost. So there is a step-by-step issue take. That is the first thing on the modernization. Legacy to modernization. It cannot be done on a day one. It has to be taken in the baby steps. And each step will have its own ROI model. Sometimes it is even moving to a cloud from an on-premises and running smoothly is an ROI. Because you are not disrupting the business. And then you can move to that is first thing. Second is that to your answer on the product which is small but which can be already or digital. So that is a quick way. Okay. Now other is that if I'm building something new with the technology that are available, I should use the latest of the technology which are scalable, which will give me impact, which will have less of the cost. So my new development will always go on a SaaS model with the new tools which are available, which will give me revenue. Okay. It is not necessary that you have to have impact on 1 lakh customer. Even I give an example. Two examples. One is that RFPs. So let's say you are in the business of where you respond to RFPs comes up 500 pages, thousands of pages of RFP. It will take weeks and weeks of people to even read the RFP and create a point and then respond to it. Now with the AI, you can do it in 1 hour. Legal contracts. You can just review and ensure that is there anything I need to be bothered about it. I mean, I was working on one MOU which I received a couple of days back. I mean, I read the MOU, but then I gave it to the Gemini and said, can you tell me what are the critical points I need to be, I need to look at this thing. I wanted to look at that, have I missed anything? So, there is a huge amount of legal knowledge available, but it is all in papers. So, by moving to the AI, using AI, you can have the answer to your complex problem of what the decision was given in the file, you may have in 5 minutes. So those things may not have the impact immediately, but it has a high impact from an ROI and from the all other perspective. And it you can do in parallel. I hope that answers you.
So, good afternoon, sirs. my name is Anish. My question is that there is a huge portion of our demographic which is young and they are cheap labor basically. So the thing is, will AI enable transformation or automation? Will that threaten them? And like, how are we supposed to reconcile to that? I think that's a very good question. Please.
Not cheap. Labor is no longer, labor arbitrage in India is no longer cheap.
I think I was about to say on those lines, labor is going to become expensive. And more expensive. Let's say this happened in China also. This happened in India also. And I think the coming of AI, one insight which I have is like, and I'm sure it's a shared insight, the cost of labor, the cost of the physical labor might significantly increase if you are referring to that section of G. But if you're referring to, let's say, today, thousands of labor gave an outcome of agricultural produce of, let's say, 100 units. In future, that situation might change. There could be tools and tech to produce that 100 units with less amount of labor. But of course, that being said, the labor arbitrage might change in it.
And I think if you're referring to the industry, the IT service sector, it may shift. I don't think it's going to disappear. How we do work will evolve. Today, you will probably see people leveraging AI to do 60 to 70% of their work. And then the rest of the 40% still needs validation, assumptions, and AI. So I'll come back to the first part, the labor part. First of all, India is no longer cheap in world comparison. There was a time where we were like going above Vietnam, there were other countries, but from a talent pool perspective, there is a huge amount of talent which is available, but it's no longer considered cheap in India. There are other countries which are much, much lower. So that aspect will always play out going forward.
One quick point. In next 12 to 18 months, the L1 jobs are going to be eliminated. So those L1 jobs will be taken care by the agentic, which we talk about, whatever it is, that is going to be a reality. But all the jobs will shift a level up. If you do not upskill, irrespective of AI, we are also going to lose the jobs. I mean, Y2K came, people said everybody will lose a job. Computerization came, everybody will lose a job. Nothing happened like that. So people need to upskill. But yes, L1 jobs, pure mundane customers or job, they are going to go away.
If I add 1 or 2 points here, especially from IT or IT industry's perspective, there will be shift. And this shift will happen because the way we are doing things, we will not do it in the same way going forward. There will be shift in the role play. I mean, if you see, and this is happening. If you see, as I mentioned, that some of the tech giants, they are reducing people. Some of the companies which are famous for recruiting freshers, they are reducing fresher intake. But similarly, in the market before, the shift at the senior level was pretty low. Somebody at maybe 15 years of experience in architect or something. But now it is happening in a large amount of numbers because the new demands have been created. So there is a change is happening. Second, the role play. If you have limited number, the organization is going to be lean organization. Previously, I mean, India was famous because it has, I mean, if it's a managed service need, some of the SI companies can present, yes, I have 100 people, I have 500 people, I have 1,000 people. Now that will change. It will be more on the skill set, niche skill set, capability recruitment. So it means what Anand sir mentioned, that it means that there has to be a change. And they don't need a middle management to monitor the resources, to monitor the team members. The team members will not do that. So but still the job needs to be done, even though it's an agentic one, they need orchestrators. The orchestrators should be there, who can orchestrate to get the job done. A job needs to be split into sizable chunks that needs to be done by different agent, then you still need an orchestrator to join the hands and come and complete the solution. We need SMEs who can validate whatever that AI is saying is right or wrong. SMEs are needed. We need architects who can define the job needs to be done, this should be the solution architecture, that AI can't do. So certain job roles will be there, role play will be changed. And organization definitely we will lean, but the new openings will also be there. The way we are now using, we learn the way to question. Prompt engineering. It has already come up, people are doing that. But how we can enhance that with the agentic approach? Those things needs to be there. So the market will be changing. Definitely it will change, but it is not something that is what Chandan also mentioned, it will not disappear. Because people are putting more money to technology to survive. So definitely the technology industry is right?
And there will be impact on big and small organizations altogether also. So do not think of disruptions being affecting only one strata of the workforce. Big companies are being affected. Let's say, like sir was mentioning, three big giant legal companies in US lost a lot of market share, and after Anthropic released a plugin, just a plugin, not a beta version. So the disruptions will happen across the orgs, and there will be advantages like never before of people coming into workforce. Today, self-education models might become more available. People can learn through their mobiles in written or oral communication because the AI can do that very easily. So a lot of advantages and opportunities of upskillment will also come to light. So definitely do not worry about the disruption because that has always been the case. Changes have come, changes will come. But I think it's also important to look at the opportunities. And I think the rules will shift and there will be new orchestrators.
If you just add one point here, we got a job, we are working very closely with our network firms as well, network firms. And this is very unique. I mean, previously we got a kind of a job like, hey, I want to build a chatbot, or I want to build a data lake, whatever that can be. Now this time we got a job that there is a third-party software vendor who creates a retailer onboarding platform. So it's more like a it's a kind of SaaS platform. Retailer need to just take subscription and they can run their business leveraging that. But the job that PwC got is how we can ensure that this platform follow the ethical guidelines. So we build the AI guardrail for it. Now this is a new type of jobs. People with an MLOps understanding, people with the responsible AI understanding, they can probably support such initiatives. So it also means that there will be certain segment of the jobs where you are going to see much training which was not there traditionally. So traditionally there will be, and again, there is change in the job market. Like previously we look for people with an ML understanding. Now we look for people with an ML understanding, application integration skill. Because I know that this individual needs to play that orchestrated role. So they should know all those things, how to deploy. It's not only about that building a model. Building model can be done by empathy, can be done by person is already there.
So the JD will change and you need to follow that JD to stay relevant.
I think 30 seconds to reduce the anxiety level, I make the statement that I made. While the job of a fresh lawyer, as we talked about, who were trying to study the judgment if agreed or what was given, say, will go away. But equally now that same fresh lawyer would be can utilize to create a much more stronger argument because the analysis are doing within minutes now. So job of fresh lawyer will still remain, it will upskip to the next one.
Thank you, panel, for such a great outlook on how the AI will blend with the existing era. Due to proximity of time, we won't be able to take any more questions, but if you have any questions, do share it with the IIC team along with the panelists to whom it is being directed to.
Thank you so much, sir. As we conclude this insightful discussion, one message resonates strongly. Decision intelligence is not just about data, it is about discipline, accountability, governance, and value creation. As a token of our appreciation, we would like to present our esteemed panelists and moderator with certificate and goodie bags for their invaluable insights and contributions today.
I want to thank all the students for the lovely interactive session. When I entered in this room and I was told as the idea, I said this discussion will go over in 60 minutes, but now it looks like that we can still continue after the whole day discussing these points. So thank you for asking very good questions and thanks for putting a nice question to us.
I will in fact second Anand. Exactly, it becomes very interesting. And thanks to all of you for such support and the insights, your queries, which basically fuels this discussion. And I really like to thank Kashipur for organizing such sessions. So there is a good opportunity for us as well to listen from the students.
Thank you very much. Thanks to all the guys who could stay awake. And unfortunately for the ones who dozed off, maybe we were not good enough. If you have any questions, you shoot us. If those queries can keep you waiting next time.
Thank you everyone for being there like early Saturday morning. I think it was a great experience for me and others. Thanks a lot.
Mr. Abhinav Vijayvargiya. So you're reminded that even the most sophisticated analytics and well-drafted strategies fail without ownership and accountability was a powerful reality check. You highlighted that execution, not just insight, is what ultimately drives impact. Thank you for your grounding analytics in responsibility and action. We now invite Professor Utkarsh to kindly present the token of appreciation. Mr. Anand Aggarwal, your perspective on investing where ROI, scalability, and impact align give us a clear strategic framework for intelligent decision making. Thank you for your bold and practical lens. We now invite Professor Utkarsh to kindly present the token of appreciation. Mr. Chandan Vijay, so your insight that governance is the very foundation of trust in data and impact. You reminded us that intelligent enterprise are built not just on analytics but on structured access, accountability, and responsible data governance. We now invite Professor Utkarsh to kindly present a token of appreciation. Mr. Devnu Bhattacharya, your point that data resides in people before it resides in system was thought-provoking. The emphasis on guardrails, eliminating biases, sanitizing data, and adding context reminded us that intelligence without responsibility can be misleading. Thank you for highlighting the human dimension behind enterprise. Now I invite Professor Deepak Verma to kindly present the token of appreciation. Mr. Gaurav Sharma. Sir, your insights that data is only as powerful as the way it is collected and interpreted was incredibly practical. The reminder that decisions cannot rely on unilateral data points and that in business, margins are ultimately determine the sustainability, brought from finance realism to analytical ambition. Thank you for anchoring intelligence in business fundamentals. We now invite Professor Deepak Verma to kindly present the topic solution. Mr. Rahul Vijayvargiya, thank you for being a wonderful moderator, for flawlessly driving the conversation and making our panel a huge success. We now invite Professor Deepak Verma to kindly present the token of appreciation. We extend our heartfelt gratitude to all our esteemed panelists for sharing not just frameworks but lived experience from front lines of intelligent enterprise. A special note of thanks to our moderator, Mr. Rahul Vijayvargiya, for seamlessly steering this high impact discussion and bringing structure and clarity in such diverse perspectives. We request everyone to please gather in the center for group photo. Everyone please watch that.